Well, I got involved in the ethanol issue back sometime in the late 70s. We were watching as the crops we were raising, corn and soybeans, weren't worth much. Land prices weren't worth much. And so how do we break out of this? And I'm going to use Jimmy Carter's word malaise, because he's the one that actually launched this. He froze trade with Russia when the Soviet Union, when the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. A lot of people remember that he shut off the U.S. participation in the Olympics in Moscow that year, but also he shut off trade, our export of corn and soybeans and other products to the Soviet Union, to send a message. When that happened, the administration had said to our farmers, plant fence row to fence row. They went out and planted fence row to fence row, and Jimmy Carter shut off the trade, and you saw a calamity. And for an entire decade, we saw, that was the 80s, we saw land prices spiral downward, grain prices spiral downward. We had drought in the middle of that, and it was a disaster for the family farm throughout that decade. Well, through that period of time, when you're down in the bottom, you start thinking, what are we going to do to get a better market for our crops? So, especially it started in Minnesota, southern Minnesota, and also a little bit behind that, Iowa picked up and actually carried a significantly larger share of the ball in the end. But we developed an ethanol industry. And this industry was, what are we going to do with all of this corn? Well, let's convert it into fuel. And we began doing that. We had to have market access. If you could have had all of the gallons of ethanol you wanted, and you could not have given them away into the markets in those days because you couldn't get that into the tank at the gas station. The petroleum interest was they control 100% of the fuel that goes into our liquid burning vehicles that run on our roads. So we had to find a way to get market access. We were able to do that through federal legislation. There was a subsidy of 51 cents a gallon that we had until a couple of years ago. That's gone. Ethanol is not subsidized today. There is a renewable fuel standard that requires that they market now a little over 13 billion gallons of ethanol. We're burning around 140 billion gallons altogether with gas and ethanol in America. And so we're moving this in the right direction. But it's not costing the taxpayers money today. Per BTU, ethanol competes with gasoline. We just need to keep the market access so that it can continue to be in your tank. At 10% of the gallons you burn on the road today are ethanol. If you take 10% out of any market, you'll see prices spike and you'd see gas grow up dramatically.